Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to now welcome to the stage, talking about reputation greatness, Amith Prabhu. Amith is a great supporter of AMAC, and I like to tell the story that he was one of the first people that asked me to speak at his Praxis event when I first took the job as CEO of AMAC. So it is wonderful to have him here on the AMAC stage for the first time, talking about reputation, which is increasingly important, and we all know that when we look to data, we can manage it, we can measure it, and we can make it better for all of those brands. So I'd like to now welcome Amith to the stage to talk about reputation greatness. Thank you, Amith.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonah. Thank you, Asim. And thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. It's my first time in Bulgaria and first time at AMEC Summit as well. I'm looking forward to the next 2 days and my next 20 minutes here. The reason I'm here today is I've been talking of a concept for the last 10 years with corporate communication leaders back in my home country, India. One of the things that stakeholders at companies get asked by PR leaders from time to time is, what are you doing PR for? What is your objective of PR? And for many years, PR was all about media clippings and media coverage. But that's changed over the years. There's much more to PR than just media coverage. And how do we measure PR beyond media coverage and media clippings? So I have a concept I want to share, which maybe the future of how PR is measured. In 2010, when I was 6 years into the profession, I first heard of the Barcelona Principles, and I loved it. And I think it's time now, when AMEC moves to the next 25 years, to build a new concept, a new framework of measuring public relations, and because of why we do it. And I'll answer in the next few minutes what this is all about. Before that, a couple of quick stories. 10 years ago, I used the power of Twitter and LinkedIn to write to the man who ran the Edelman Chicago office, saying I want to work with Edelman in Chicago. There were many reasons I did that. And as luck would have it, a few weeks later, I had a job offered, a couple of interviews online, and I began to work with Edelman in Chicago. And that's when I was exposed to multiple conferences, multiple events for the PR fraternity, which we didn't have back in India. So I made it my life's mission, saying I'll spend 2 years here, go back to my home country and build on these things to help the Indian PR fraternity, which is about 10,500 to 12,000 strong, to have all these kind of things there. So in the last 10 years, I've built a school of PR in India where we train young graduates to become PR professionals. We run a series of conferences in India. Praxis is one of them, which some of you have heard of over the years. We run a magazine for PR professionals called Reputation Today, and an awards for PR professionals called Fulcrum Awards. And as luck would have it, we had 2 years of lockdowns and COVID. And I was wondering, what do I do beyond doing events online? So a friend of mine who runs corporate communications for a large conglomerate called Godrej Group, who also spoke at AMEC Summit a few years ago, and we said we'll use our weekends in the lockdown to write a book on PR. So we did that, and last year this book called The Pursuit of Reputation came out. I have a few copies here. I'm going to give one to the person who asked me the first question at the 19th minute of my session. So I'm going to speak for about 18 to 19 minutes and keep a couple of minutes for question and answer towards the end. Can we have these slides on the, it's okay, so it's here, sorry. Yeah. So the journey for every brand is a long journey. It's a long road that brands travel. Some miss the bus and then fall off the road. Some go and achieve great heights. And we've seen that across the world, across brands. It's not different in most countries. And in this journey, when public relations is implemented as part of a brand's progress, there are various milestones that public relations holds. My father, who's 75 years old now, worked for 35 years as a professor of political science in a university in my hometown back in India. And for the longest time, he did not know what public relations was all about. It took me many years to explain to me what PR was. And then I also began to meet a lot of parents of young graduates who wanted to have their children get into the PR profession but had no clue what their children were getting into. So sitting with them over many months of conversations, I developed an entire framework which I used to explain what PR is all about. So the next few minutes with this slide, I'm going to tell you what PR is all about that you may already know, but this will help you also tell a lot of people you deal with on what public relations is all about. So the first aspect of PR is, I think all PR, there should have been a comma between culture and campaign, sorry for that. I think all PR is made of one of these four or all these four things. PR is communications for sure. There's a lot of common sense, culture, and campaigns. Okay, and I think no public relations program or reputation management framework will work without one of these four at the base. And then as we move along, I use an analogy of a house as well to explain this sometimes, but I'll use the road here. As we move along, what does PR do? PR helps in creating content, help in connecting with stakeholders, helps in counseling leaders and businesses on reputation, and helps during a crisis. So this is what PR does based on this foundation. And then there are 2 or 3 aspects of PR that are really high level, but we all do it. One is strategy. PR helps in formulating business and communication strategy. It helps in telling stories, and storytelling is a big part of PR. And then there are aspects in PR which we sometimes spend money on, which is impact, innovation, and influence. They're all self-explanatory. Impact is mostly CSR, philanthropy, corporate giving in different ways. It also helps build certain things that PR can achieve. And then we have innovation, various innovative things that are done from a PR point of view. Like the best innovation we can think of was 30 or 40 years ago, when the Chinese and Korean companies began to fly down journalists from around the world to see what they do with their auto brands. And that became the FAM trip, or the familiarization trip, that a lot of media is now part of, with various sectors using that as an innovation as well. And then we have influence. The simplest form of influence today is we have influencers using Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn to talk about brands. And the highest form is when brands sign up huge football stars and cricketers and actors to become brand ambassadors as well, which in a way helps the brand do its own public relations. Then that moves on to 3 things that we can't do PR without. And I put that there because all of the tactics of PR have to be embedded with research, which we all do. With ethics at the core. If there's no ethics, it's not PR. And measurement. I think we can't do good PR if we don't measure it. But the point I'm making here is we've always measured clippings largely, and I think in the previous presentation we saw there's much more to PR than just media coverage. And this leads us to the 5 objectives of PR. I think all PR is done for one of these 5 things: goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust. But for the longest time, all PR was only measured for engagement. How did we engage with media? How do we engage with customers using media? But I think it's time now to think of measuring reputation's greatness through goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust. And it's possible to measure those. There are various frameworks that one can apply. And I feel it's time now for Amith to give the world one framework that they can measure PR with across brands, across categories in the years to come. The ultimate goal of PR. Ultimately, we use goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, trust to build credibility. Every brand wants credibility. Every brand wants its customers, its employees, its stakeholders to believe in it and buy more of it, talk more of it, right? So I told you a story in the beginning that I went back to India to create properties that I felt were much needed in India. And I built an entire ecosystem for PR in India, starting with Praxis. And Asim, who's here, is a great supporter of Praxis, and many others have come to it over the years. And Praxis was built without any media coverage. Praxis was built without any media outreach. It was only built through word of mouth, through a few phone calls, through SMSs back then, and WhatsApp later on. And today it's a $500,000 property. We raise $500,000 of funds and sponsorships to make it come alive. We bring 750 professionals from across the country to 1 or 2 hotels. We book 2 hotels for the entire 2 days. Happens in September every year. We fly in speakers from around the world. And mind you, till this date, in 11 editions, we've never repeated a single speaker. Every edition has a new speaker. If you've spoken once, you can come back to Praxis as a delegate, but not to speak. And that's something we have done uniquely, using the power of goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust. And when I end this presentation, I'll share a quick case study of what we did last year to give back to society as well. So I'm going to spend a few seconds on goodwill. I think all of you know what goodwill is, but to give you my own example here, I used the power of the goodwill we built with Praxis in 2012, 13, and 14 to build an entire school of PR. Today, that's a school which has about 20, 25 young graduates graduating every year and going to the best of PR firms in India. And it's all done because we built goodwill using a tool called an event or Praxis. And there is no easy way to measure it. The only way to measure it is to see if people come back to it every year and sponsors support it every year. And speakers respect our decision to not have them speak a second time. And I think that's been built. Even the biggest of our sponsors don't get a second chance to be a speaker. They can give another person to be a speaker, but not the same managing director or CEO who would speak at other events year on year. Respect. I think, and this is something you can apply to any brand, I think respect is something that is earned. You can't demand respect, and it only comes to doing the right things. So whether it's a brand you like, a brand you repeat purchasing, it's because that brand has made you feel entrenched into it in more ways than one, and therefore you respect it. And there are many of you here who use certain brands in certain categories that you believe you respect and therefore you use that brand. You wouldn't use a brand you wouldn't respect unless somebody gifted it to you and you said, okay, I'll use it while it lasts and then maybe just throw it away. Engagement, and I'll explain these in more detail in a few moments from now, is what we have always been doing. We engage with our customers, engage with stakeholders using media in the most common ways, but there are many more ways to engage today thanks to digital marketing, thanks to social media, thanks to LinkedIn, and thanks to other tools that we use in big ways today. Affinity, I think Mark Zuckerberg used that very smartly. He used the like symbol, and if you go to the Facebook headquarters in I think Menlo Park in California, you have a huge sculpture of the like symbol at one of the streets there. And I think every brand all the time wants people to like the brand's page on social media pages, and therefore feels that when they're putting in feed there, the customers or stakeholders who have liked the brand get it in their feed as well. And there are many ways to do that. The question is, how do we measure this, right? And I'll come to that in a few moments. And ultimately, trust. I think every brand wants its stakeholders to trust in it and talk about it to others and use it from time to time. And therefore, I'm going to sum this up by saying the 5 objectives of PR which we need to measure in the future is how do we gain goodwill, how do we command respect, how do we increase engagement, how do we build affinity, and how do we earn trust. And that's what I call the GREAT, goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust. That's where the word great comes from, and that's why I call this reputation greatness. So there are a lot of great minds in this room, and there is a solid AMIC board led by Joanna and the current chair and maybe the future chair. I think it's time for AMIC to think of a new way of measuring beyond just engagement, and that's why I'm here to share these thoughts on this entire concept. There are ways to do that, and if you go online, you'll find many ways. So I'm not going to read these slides. You can read it for yourself and maybe take pictures, but you can measure goodwill, and every brand today wants to enjoy that goodwill because they want to offer their customers more than just what the brand costs. And therefore, you can buy a car for as low as maybe in India, as low as $10,000, or you can buy a car for almost $1 million as well. I mean, a car is a car, but the reason cars charge a different pricing beyond the brand is the goodwill they have in the market for a certain reason that is built over a period of time. Same goes with various other things we invest in. I mean, I could have come to Sofia from India on a flight that would cost me just $1,000 or a flight that cost me $1,500. But I trusted the brand that offered me a flight which is more expensive and therefore chose that more expensive flight than the cheaper flight to come here because the goodwill that brand has built with me over the years. You can also measure respect in multiple ways. I've put them as 2 key stakeholders that we have. We have the stakeholder of employees and customers, also future employees and future customers. And the purpose of a brand is to ensure that it's respected by these 2 set of stakeholders. And there are ways to measure respect as well. It's just one framework here. There could be many other frameworks that one could develop in the future. This is all food for thought. You can measure engagement, and the most common way we measure engagement is through media clippings and media coverage that we get. This is one stream of measuring engagement, but there's much more to do with social media and digital marketing gaining traction over the years. Affinity is how much you are liked, and these are things that you can't just do with media clippings, whether it's net promoter score or repeat purchase. It can only happen through surveys and asking people whether they use a brand and why they use a brand from time to time. I'm going to share a quick case study after this slide on a concept we created last year in India. So we realized we have built equity, and I think a sum of goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust is also the equity that a brand builds. So we said we've done so much for the PR world in India over 10 years. How can we do something for society? And a challenge we faced was every time someone goes to a party, and you do that across the world, you go to someone's birthday, wedding, anniversary, or a housewarming, we take random gifts for people. We take gifts that they may not want, but we want to give it to them. Or we give them gifts that we think they may want, but they already have enough of that. And it becomes usually a wasteful expenditure. So we said, how do we help people who have enough to not accept gifts that are wasteful? And we used a very cool concept. We wrote to about 200 of our senior PR leaders saying, would you support this initiative in some way or the other if we created something new as an offering from the PR community in India? And we launched something called these Sparkle gift cards, a very easy and simple concept. So we partnered with India's 10 leading NGOs. They are well-to-do NGOs, but we partnered with them because they have a lot of goodwill, respect, engagement, affinity, and trust in the market. We partnered with them, and it's an online, you can go and buy these cards online as well, sparklegiftcards.com. So instead of giving somebody a wine bottle that costs, say, $30 or 30 euros, you buy a Sparkle gift card with that value. So if I go to Asim's birthday, I give him a Sparkle gift card instead of wine. Maybe he'll miss that wine. And Asim has a choice in a couple of weeks to use that card to divert that entire amount to one of the 10 NGOs we partnered with. And if Asim doesn't do that in the 3 weeks' time, the entire money goes to all 10 NGOs equally. So there's no wastage. Like in the US alone, I think about $6 billion of unused gift cards are lying in people's homes over the years. And there's a NBC survey that says that as well. So people buy gift cards to give somebody. Either they lose it or they don't use it, and it just expires. And Starbucks and Amazon and Macy's make money out of it. So this idea was to not waste people's goodwill and intention. And this entire business and this brand was built on the success of Praxis and Score that was built over 10 years. And we have sold almost, in Indian rupees in the last 6 months, about 2 million Indian rupees worth of gift cards to people and the entire money has gone to charity. And all built without any media coverage, just using goodwill, respect, affinity, and trust that we've built over the years as a case study for you. The last couple of things before I open it out for questions. Oh, sorry. I think I'm clicking, yeah. Sorry. I think there are a couple of people in this room who are editors of magazines. I saw Communicate India here as Ms. Pardon here. I want to catch up with her later anyway. So a few years ago, we felt in India there was not enough of reading material for Indian PR professionals. So we ran a website, and about 150 or 200 professionals over the years have written for this website. We also ran a magazine. You've seen a few covers here called Reputation Today. But after COVID, we stopped it as a quarterly magazine and made it an annual magazine. But if you want to go and read about articles on the world of PR, you can go and check it out. It's called reputationtoday.in. Yeah, so sorry, I'm going to somebody else's slide by mistake. Apologies for that. Yeah, so I'm going to stop here. We have about 3 to 4 minutes. I promised to finish in 20 minutes. I know I was a little fast, but I'm mindful of people's time and not making the next person wait. If there are questions to ask, the first question gets a copy of the book. Jonah can ask me the first question. She already has a copy.
Going to be able to double down on that. No,
yeah.
Wonderful. Great pick. In fairness, I will open it up for the one question since you're going to give away the book to the audience. Who has a question for Amith? Perfect.
If nobody has a question, I'll give the book to Julia.
Nervous energy. I like it. Oh, Kyle Mason in the front row. Please, what is your question? Wait for a microphone.
Thanks.
Was I too fast? Or was I
No, not at all. Okay. It was great. Kyle Mason, I'm in Insights at Shell. Thanks for that presentation. I've worked 15 years in this industry, and I still struggle to tell my parents what I do. So that would be really helpful. My question really is, when you're talking about the roadmap in terms of what PR is sort of responsible for, how do you see the role of PR and communications changing to adapt more to business strategy? So when we talk about building trust, credibility, goodwill with audiences, what about PR and communications' role prior to any communications, but as the custodians of reputation? How do we help the business understand reputation and what it should do to actually kind of prevent challenges or issues before they get to the PR and comms table?
Well, thanks for a great question. I think a few years ago at the Page Society conference, someone made a comment saying PR is 90% behavior and 10% communications. I think if brands behave right and brand custodians and brand owners behave right, and we have examples from around the world, when brands do the right thing, they tend to earn goodwill, respect, affinity, and trust. And if brands don't do the right thing, they somewhere fall along the wayside and lose out in the long run. So I think PR's role in the future is going to be a lot of advising brand leaders, brand owners, founders, CEOs to do the right thing. Because sometimes a lot of leaders think they're doing the right thing, but they're not doing the right thing and end up landing in trouble and making the PR team clean the mess. I think PR's role is going to be increasingly to tell these leaders that they need to do the right thing all the time without even blinking an eyelid for a moment. So I think that's going to be PR's role in the future. But for that question, here's the book for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kyle, for the great question. Thank you again, Amith. How about a round of applause for Amith for a great presentation on PR greatness? Thank you so much.